Hi everybody. In the previous video we've created the show orders program, which we can see over here. Here's our show orders controller. And in the show orders controller we wrote all of our logic over here. Now I would like to focus on the life cycle of the controller. What happens when we call it? How does it work? What is the orders of things? When things should happen? So the first thing that happens when we are clicking on the menu, this piece of code is executed. New, training simple screens, show orders, and run. Okay, this is a namespace, as we know. This is the class name. This parent indicates that we're calling its constructor, and here we are calling the run method of that controller. Now let's understand what goes on behind the scenes when we do that. So when we call the controller, when we use this line of code, the first part of this line of code is in charge of calling the constructor and creating an instance. We are creating a new instance of our controller and calling the special constructor method where the instance is created and defined. And in our code, this is the constructor method. In it, we've defined the tables that we want to use, the filters that we want to use, the order bys that we want to use, and even the relations that we want to use. In the constructor is typically where we're going to build our controller to make all of its definitions before later we're going to execute it. Next thing that happens is the run method. Now we have an instance, it's alive, and by doing this dot over here, we are taking the instance that we've just created and calling its run method. And when we call the run method, it will call our run method that all it has in it is a call to the execute. Let's go back to the code and see it. If we go to show orders, our run method just has a call to the execute. But this is where everything actually comes to life. When you are calling the execute method, the controller comes to life and starts performing the following event. It will perform the onload event where we will set all the settings of our controller, like allow update or which view it's going to use or all of the configurations that is relevant to a specific execution of our controller. We're going to run the onStart event. That will happen once when the controller starts. Then the data will get loaded from the database, and for every row, the onEnter row event, the onLeave row event will happen. The onSaving row will happen for rows that were changed, and then those rows that were changed will be saved to the database. After the controller completes processing all of the rows in our view, or the user chooses to exit from a UI controller, then the onEnd event will happen, and eventually the onUnload. After all of these events, all of this gets run just by our usage of the execute method. It will call this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and eventually when it's done, the code will continue after the execute method. So the important thing to get from these two slides is that we first of all call the constructor in which we construct our controller, and then we're calling its run method to run the controller, and from that execute method all of this is going on. Next, we'll show this to you in the code.